We are officially back with chapter 204 of One Punch Man. This chapter has an awesome cover of Saitama mid-punch, so you know what that means. It actually means absolutely nothing, because almost every single One Punch Man chapter cover doesn't relate to the chapter at all, and it's very much true with this chapter. I'm just gonna rip the band-aid right off the top because I know that many of you are wondering, like as soon as you hop into this video, no, we are not getting the continuation of Blast vs. Empty Void. We are picking up from where the previous chapter left off, where we get introduced to these new powerful heroes called the Neo Heroes. Here we got the introduction of some pretty interesting characters like Zayditz, the billionaire turned hero, and in Felsenave, someone who runs a cult so large that it stands 3 million people strong. And of course the super strong pop idol Wavy Gaza or Webby Gaza. Honestly, I'm going to still call her Webby Gaza because that's what they called her in the webcomic. We also find out that Suiryu has now joined the Neo Leaders along with Super Alloy Darkshine, who of course is a retired Hero Association hero. And towards the end of the chapter, we actually find out he's not going to be fighting. He's pretty much a retired hero, and all he's going to be doing is training the new recruits. And for some reason, this pisses off the sumo wrestler hero Raiden, who gets into Darkshine's face at the very end of that chapter, which leads directly into this one. Because here we actually get the official introduction to Raiden, and we learn that Raiden is the champion of Super Sumo, where only super wrestlers over 3 meters tall and weighing over 400 kilograms are allowed to participate. Ever since childhood, whether it's sports or confrontations with adults, he has never experienced a loss. And they go a little bit further into his career to explain just how much of a godly figure he is in the world of sumo. Since debuting as a super sumo, this extraordinary man has had 700 matches and remains undefeated. Even though he was actively competing until recently, he ultimately decided to retire from Super Sumo in order to become a Neo hero. And this is the line that really shows just how strong Raiden is, because they continue by saying, our assessment suggests that he even surpasses the Hero Association's S-Class level, which is pretty damn impressive. Whether or not they're kind of overestimating Raiden or whatever, it's still pretty crazy to point out that on a physical level, he's pretty much as strong as an S-Class hero, stronger than most of them, honestly. But then we continue with Raiden and Super Alloy Darkshine's conversation, and Raiden essentially goes on to say, hey, I know who you are and you're a pretty popular hero even within my circle, so it's kind of weird that someone with such strength as yours is not going to be fighting. And then he decides to test his own strength against Super Alloy Darkshine's. And then they kind of have this hand-to-hand standoff where the ground around them starts shattering, again showing just how strong Raiden is in terms of pure strength. But Raiden just says forget it because he looks like he's really not into it, that being Darkshine. And then he says, you don't seem to be in the best condition at the moment anyway, but also thinks to himself, or maybe you're just past your prime. So of course this is setting up Raiden to eventually be humbled by some crazy dragon level disaster or something like that. Almost exactly how Super Alloy Darkshine got humbled by the Monster Association arc. He's gonna mess around and find out pretty soon, I'm pretty sure. But at this moment, 2 new characters barge in through the door. The first one being this guy with scars all over his face, looking like a boxer. And the other one that also looks like a boxer, but he looks more like cybernetic, I guess. He has kind of a cybernetic eye going on. The one with the boxing gloves gets introduced as Mars Leo, coming from an underground fighting group called the Underground Fighters. Pretty simple enough, right? And he apparently fights opponents with gloves stuffed with iron sand and calls it death boxing. Then they go on to elaborate exactly what this underground fighting tournament is, where they say, the high-stakes fighting tournament in the old underground shelter, Cyborg Fight, where people with modified bodies would participate and bet on large sums of money. Among them, there was one who was so strong that nobody would bet on him, so he ended up getting kicked out. And from the webcomic translation, this guy's name is supposed to be Solitude, but they might change it up for the manga version, we'll see. Doesn't really matter though. So apparently Mars Leo barged into the room because he believed that he was done dirty by not being chosen to be a Neo leader when he is so very clearly physically strong. Then honestly he goes on to make a pretty good point by saying pretty much why is someone like me who's actually very strong not considered a Neo leader, but just an ordinary rich guy and a religious leader, along with an idol who looks like a doll? Why do they get to be Neo leaders? And that's a very good question, because to this point, again, specifically Zayditz and Felsenave, they seem to be just regular dudes with really big influence. That's all they really have going for them. Webby Gaza, on the other hand, we've already seen that she's actually pretty strong, and we're going to find out why, right now, actually, finally. Because Solitude uses his robotic eye to analyze Webby Gaza, and he finds out that 71% of her body has been modified, meaning she's 71% cyborg. And we're pretty numb to seeing cyborgs in the series at this point because we know Genos, we know Drive Knight, they are pretty much like almost entirely cyborgs, so cyborg stuff doesn't seem like super impressive to us anymore. Again, we're kind of made like numb to it, but Solitude puts in perspective exactly how crazy this is, because he says even the mechanical warriors in Cyborg Fight only have modified wrists, legs, and eyes. It's at most 30%. Any modification over 60% is extremely risky, and the chances of success are very slim. So he thinks to himself that someone like Webby Gaza, who's at 71%, must have a pretty strong resolve to be able to go under that kind of modification and still be alright. Well, Mars Leo doesn't care about any of this and starts throwing a bunch of punches around, and one of them accidentally hits Darkshine. It seems like he was actually trying to aim for him just to show how tough he was. So then he goes, my bad, I was planning on shadowboxing. I didn't think I would hit anyone, haha. And he asks Darkshine if he's okay. Either way though, Darkshine simply says, I'm okay, but what about your wrist? Is it okay? And then we see Mars Leo's wrist and it's all busted up. This is when Suiryu interjects and he's like, alright guys, like you're obviously not on this level, you're not that guy, so might as well just stand down, right? This of course pisses off both of them and they both start throwing flurries of punches and kicks towards Suiryu, which he very easily avoids. So doing a little bit of a mini power scaling here, since Suiryu is strong enough to pretty much take out a demon level threat, maybe not like a super strong demon level threat, and that means that these guys are pretty damn weak, like they're probably like tiger level at best, you know? Maybe approaching demon level, so I mean of course these guys do not belong here as Neo leaders, but again, like how Mars Leo pointed out, it doesn't seem like Infelsinave or Zaditz really belong there either, right? So it's gonna be kind of interesting to see exactly why they gathered these particular people to become the Neo leaders. It seems like it's very strategic, right? But that's stuff that we're gonna be getting into future chapters probably. Most likely the next chapter, because unfortunately it does seem like we're going to be continuing with this Neo hero stuff in the next chapter. We're not going to be getting back to Blast versus Empty Void. And you know, I've already spoken my piece on what I think about this entire like derailment from the Blast versus Empty Void stuff to this like new little mini arc, or I guess a little quick introduction into the next major arc of the series. I just think it's very out of place. I think that the chapters themselves are very good and filled with very important information, but it's just like the placement of them is just very awkward and weird. I have had people in the comments section tell me that they feel like the way this chapter is going to end, or this little mini arc is going to end, it's going to kind of follow the webcomic, meaning there's going to be a pretty big reveal at the very end of this little sequence. And that's going to be a perfect transition into the Blast and Empty Void stuff, because the reveal kind of relates to it, right? And I don't want to spoil anything for you manga only, so, you know, you webcomic readers, you kind of know what I'm talking about here. So if things transition back to Blast versus Empty Void in the way that I feel like it might, then maybe that kind of redeems the whole like step away from that fight to get to this stuff first and then go back to it. But again, it just seems really out of place. They could have waited to do this stuff, you know, after the Blast and Empty Void stuff. And of course, with these chapters still only being like 15 pages long, not as long as we're used to, then it just seems like a much longer wait and more of a drag to get through these chapters. But you know, stay positive, guys. These are important chapters. These are definitely, you know, chapters that we want to be talking about, discussing, and analyzing. So let me know in the comments below what you think about this chapter. And what do you think about these new heroes and characters that have just been introduced? Do you like them? Do you hate them? Let me know all your thoughts in the comments below. That does it for this one, though. Have an absolutely wonderful morning, afternoon, evening, whatever. And I'll see you guys in the next video.